Star Wars only, I don't know what the fuck your problem is.
When Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, ends the Skywalker saga, you're going to see a few things at the ending credits that we are used to seeing. We're going to see written and directed by J.J. Abrams, also written by Chris Terrio, and also the based on characters created by George Lucas credit that he gets at every Star Wars film now that he's not involved with it as much. But we're also going to get another interesting part of the credits, and that's going to be story by Derek Connolly and Colin Trevorrow. And if you don't remember, these two guys were the original writers for this film. Derek Connolly and Colin Trevorrow worked together a lot when it comes to films. Safety Not Guaranteed, what's the other ones? Jurassic World and whatnot, all those movies. They're a dynamic duo and they always like to work together. And so what happened was they were brought in for Episode 9. They were the original writers and director for Episode 9. Colin Trevorrow was supposed to direct it. And what happened was, we actually don't have too much information on the behind-the-scenes stuff, but from what I know, is that the script didn't go too well. They didn't really get a script going that was working with them and that was working with Lucasfilm. They had a little bit of creative differences with the pair, and so, like usual, they left the project, and then came in J.J. Abrams, who brought in Chris Terrio to co-write the film. And I think it's interesting that we're actually getting a credit to these guys at the end of it with a story by them. And this is coming from the Writers Guild of America, who is making this decision, I assume. And I'm kind of interested to see what the differences was with their script compared to Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams. From what I do know, and from what I do recall, is Colin Trevorrow wanted Luke Skywalker to be in Episode 9, and Episode 8 he of course died, and that was a decision by Rian Johnson, because Rian Johnson said he really didn't know how it would work out in Episode 9 to have Luke live. You'd have so many different characters in different parts of the galaxy at that point, and it would be a little confusing, and I kind of agree with him, kind of don't. I do think Luke Skywalker should have died off in Episode 9, but he's going to be in it anyways. But that's not 110% solid information, that's just stuff that we've heard through the grapevine of things. I am pretty curious though on what the fallout was, what the differences was between Colin Trevorrow, Derek Connolly, and Lucasfilm, if they really couldn't get a good script going, or they simply had a script going that Lucasfilm simply did not like, and how their story would differ from the Rise of Skywalker that we're getting this December. Would they have Palpatine coming back? Would they have Snoke return in some way? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts that go into how the story is going to be wrapped up. And if you remember, when Colin Trevorrow told Daisy Ridley about his Episode 9 story, how he was going to end it, she cried. She cried when he told him it. And I think that means it was a very powerful and emotional story that he was trying to tell. But to be fair, a lot of people aren't entirely happy with how he's handled some of his movies. Safety Not Guaranteed, Jurassic World, the second one that came out, a lot of people weren't really happy with those films. And I know that one of those films, I believe was Safety Not Guaranteed, was kind of leading into the decision on not letting him helm Episode 9. Lucasfilm has a tendency to go for people like Colin Trevorrow, who are at the height of their game in a way, and when they're really popular in the media and in Hollywood. Colin Trevorrow, coming off of Jurassic World, was brought in for Star Wars Episode 9. The writers for the Game of Thrones show, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, they were brought in for Star Wars until they ultimately left. Phil Lord, Chris Miller were brought in after the Lego Movie and the 21 and 22 Jump Street movies, and they, of course, left. Gareth Edwards was brought in after Godzilla, and his film had a lot of post-production problems, a lot of reshoots and rewrites by Tony Gilroy. So there's not a great track record of Lucasfilm going for these extremely popular directors coming off of a very good movie at the time, and I think it's kind of one of those things we can look back in hindsight and say, maybe we shouldn't go for people who are really popular just because they're popular. But still, the fact that Colin Trevorrow's pitch made Daisy Ridley cry, the fact that he likely wanted Luke Skywalker to be in Episode 9, if you go to Galaxy's Edge, there's the TIE Fighter or something that Kylo Ren has, and it's his TIE Fighter from Episode 9, from Colin Trevorrow's Episode 9, that's not going to be in the actual film. There's interesting things like that about Colin Trevorrow's version of Episode 9 that we're probably never really going to know much about. I'm pretty confident it's not going to be until many years later, where he's doing a Q&A for another film or something, someone gets a nice interview with him after The Rise of Skywalker has come out, that we can ask him, hey, what was your Episode 9 going to be like compared to the one that we got? I really would like to know. If it's going to be worse, so be it, but a lot of the interesting things about Star Wars, at least in my opinion, is the behind-the-scenes stuff, the story that creates the story that you see in the films. That's one of the most interesting things about the original trilogy, is the struggles and the constant rewrites and problems that they had making the original trilogy, the lack of planning at the time, that you really were just kind of making up the story as you went along, and changing things that didn't work in the story that needed to be worked on because the budget constraints and everything. There's so many different outcomes that you have in the original trilogy because of the problems that it had during the 70s and 80s. So now when you look at these new films and you see a lot of these directors coming in and leaving Star Wars, it really is a curious question on why are they leaving? What's going on behind the scenes? I remember when Colin Trevorrow was originally brought in for Episode 9, one of the crazier stories was that he actually wanted to go out into space and film shots out there. Like, what the fuck, bro? Come on, like, really? You think the budget is that big that you're actually gonna go out into space and what are you gonna do? Like, throw a X-wing out the window and watch it just float? It's not like you got any wind out there. It's fucking space. But anyways, besides the point, Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly are getting their writing credits in Star Wars Episode 9 with the story by credit. But my ultimate question is, are they actually basing the story for The Rise of Skywalker, the version that Chris Terrio and J.J. Abrams wrote, off of the story that these two guys are working on, Derek Connolly and Colin Trevorrow? Or is it just one of those things where it's a nice little nod to the head of, thank you for working on Star Wars the little bit of time that you did. Thank you for attempting it with your version of the script for the film. We don't know, and the problem is we're probably never going to know except for little tidbits of information that gets leaked out through the years. Maybe someone at Lucasfilm knows more about it. Maybe we can get Colin Trevorrow to open up about it in a few years. But it'll be interesting to hear what his version of Episode 9 is, considering that it made Daisy Ridley cry, and it just didn't work out for him and Lucasfilm. So tell me your thoughts below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see y'all next time, and may the Force be with you always.